After 28 years of marriage, I thought our love was unbreakable until the day I found out my wife's secret rendezvous that shattered our family to pieces. Welcome to a raw, real tale of betrayal where every twist will leave you gasping. Subscribe to our channel for more stories that'll hit close to home. I sat at my desk thinking about the 28 years since our wedding, recalling our honeymoon and the best memories of my life. When I remember our honeymoon in the Bahamas with Elizabeth, I'm overwhelmed with nostalgia and gratitude. It was an extraordinary and truly magical time that will forever hold a special place in my heart. From the start, it felt like we'd entered an enchanted kingdom that washed away all the world's worries. Walking hand in along the pristine beaches of Nassau, with gentle waves lapping at our feet, we were engrossed in the beauty around us. The fragrant scent of hibiscus filled the air, serving as a constant reminder of the romance and tranquility that surrounded us. However, it wasn't just the captivating landscapes that made our honeymoon unforgettable, but also the experiences we shared that were etched into our souls. Exploring lush rainforests and stumbling upon hidden waterfalls revealed nature's majesty. Standing together, we marveled at the raw power and splendor around us. Our cliff-top villa in Maui offered panoramic views that seemed to stretch on forever. Each sunset painted the sky in vibrant hues, and in those precious moments when we held each other close, our hearts were filled with overwhelming love and devotion. The nights were symphonies of romance, starting with candlelight dinners on the beach under a canopy of stars, with the video game Subnautica, as we savored the exquisite taste of fresh seafood and island delicacies. The tender look in Elizabeth's eyes made these evenings truly magical. The Bahamas became more than just a destination. It became the epitome of our love story, a chapter filled with cherished memories and shared dreams, created just for us. Thinking back to our honeymoon, I relived the beauty and depth of our connection. At that time, the Bahamas served as a catalyst for our love, strengthening our bond and giving us moments of incomparable joy and peace. I cherish with sincere gratitude the precious memories we created together in this oasis of romance. Now, 28 years later, while lost in thought, my secretary came into my office and looked at me. She noticed I was staring out the window for a moment and then asked, "Michael, who should we thank for your good mood lately? Did you win the lottery or something would you like to share?" At that moment I realized I was smiling and had been in a good mood for the last 2 weeks. I explained that my wife had become very attentive and loving lately, and for the first time in years, I felt appreciated and loved. I concluded by saying that I felt like I was on my second honeymoon and couldn't get her out of my head. For the past 2 weeks I had called Elizabeth several times a day to hear her voice and tell her how much I loved and missed her. I acted like a logic teenager, but I didn't care. I was happy again and didn't want it to stop. Elizabeth and I have a strong marriage, but a 28-year relationship can become less exciting and more mundane. But for the past 2 weeks Elizabeth had been frisky, wanting to have sex almost every night and doing things she hadn't done in years. I never once suspected or thought the change in her affections was anything other than a rebirth of our marriage. I planned to surprise her with a romantic evening and left work early with a smile on my face. I paid $60 for 2 dozen roses at the florist and filled out a card expressing my love. Then I stopped at the liquor store and bought a bottle of her favorite wine along with a large box of chocolate-covered cherries, also her favorite. Tonight, I would not only tell Elizabeth how much I loved her and how happy she made me, but I would also surprise her with the 7-night cruise I bought for us in honor of our love. Smiling and practically skipping as I walked, I entered my house through the garage. As I walked up the kitchen steps, I saw, instead of my loving wife, Elizabeth, our 29-year-old daughter Emily, sitting at our kitchen table. I smiled, kissed her forehead and said, "Hello. Hey baby, where's your mom?" 2 weeks earlier, Emily and her mother had a conversation. "Emily, Mom, I'm not sure about this. I love your dad very much and I'm afraid that if I go through with this, I'll hurt him." Elizabeth: "Mom, Dad loves you and he will understand. You said yourself that you need something more than what you received before, and Dad is not getting any younger. I know that he will understand your needs and allow you to have this one-time pleasure." Elizabeth: "Emily, there's no way I can stand in front of your father and tell him I'm on a date with another man. I just can't do it." Emily: "Then let me do it. Thomas will be waiting for you at the restaurant at 7 in the evening and you will be ready to leave by 6 in the evening. When Dad gets home, I'll be here and explain everything to him and you'll get the experience you crave." Elizabeth: Honey, yes, I agreed to this date, but I have doubts. This is wrong and I shouldn't go. How will I be able to look your father in the eye for the next 2 weeks, knowing that I agreed to go on a date with another man? Emily: "Well, I can suggest that you don't tell him anything, but during these 2 weeks, show him how much you love him. Let him know that he has nothing to worry about. When I explain everything, he will understand that what you are doing is not about love, but only about new friendships and a little fun. Reach out to him and rock his world, and when I explain the situation that evening, he will welcome you back with open arms. Believe me, Dad loves you and is ready to do anything for you. He has always given you what you wanted, showing his love for you." Elizabeth: "Probably yes, and maybe you're right. Well, I mean it's just one date and it doesn't mean I'm leaving your father for another man. Having a fun night out 28 years later shouldn't be a problem. I'm going to show your dad how wonderful he is and how much I love him every night, until date night, and then, when I get back to him, I'm going to try to make him the happiest man in the world." Emily: "Mom, just make him feel loved and appreciated. He is a great guy and will give you this one-of-a-kind experience. Now I have to get home to cook dinner for James." Elizabeth: "Thanks, baby, and say hi to James. When will you two give us grandchildren?" Emily: "Soon. We've already talked and plan to start working on it in a few months." Emily said before heading home. Elizabeth sat alone in the art studio Michael had built for her behind their house, in front of her latest project. Lately, she had been having difficulty being creative because the thought of being with another man weighed heavily on. Her guilt blocked her creativity until Elizabeth remembered Emily's words and suddenly her brushes came to life, covering the canvas with vibrant colors and emotional landscapes. She felt confident she was doing the right thing for herself and that her husband would give her this experience. She found herself talking to herself as she sat alone, feeling peace, overcome her guilt. Elizabeth: "Michael may be angry at first, but I know I can make him understand. I truly love this man and he has been such a wonderful husband and father. I will be the best wife and show him how much I love him." The first night of her plan to shower him with love, Elizabeth put on his favorite baby doll nightgown after showering, styling her hair and spending time on her makeup. She met Michael as he entered the house wearing the nightgown with high heels and took him straight to the bedroom. She undressed him, unbuckling his belt and taking off his pants, surprising him with something she hadn't done in years. She gave him pleasure below the belt with great enthusiasm. His smile made her feel warm and happy. That could do this for him. Michael. Elizabeth. This was the best meeting at home in recent years. For what reason, baby Elizabeth? I just wanted to show you how special you are and how much I love you. Did you like it, Michael? I liked it. And it hasn't happened for so long that I forgot how much I missed it. Elizabeth felt pleased. She pulled him onto the bed and they kissed for several minutes. It was the best sex they had in years, and she started to rethink her date with Thomas over the next weeks. Their sex life reached a new level of excitement, and Michael was a new man, smiling, laughing, telling jokes and being as loving as before. Elizabeth was happier than she had been in a long time and rethought her plans for date night. She even told Emily how much things had changed and that maybe she didn't need this experience anymore because her dad and she had their spirits back. Emily, Mom, this is great, but don't give up just yet. Let's see how the next 2 weeks go. Just enjoy each other and see where it goes. There's no need to cancel anything yet. We'll see how you feel in 2 weeks, and you can always cancel at the last minute. I'm sure Thomas will understand, but you have to realize that you may never have this chance again. Elizabeth. Okay, maybe you're right. Tell me more about Thomas. I know he's your friend's father, but tell me again about his situation. Emily. Of course, Mom. When he learned that his wife, Emily, had an inoperable brain tumor, he took time off work and spent every second with her until her death. She was the love of his life, and after her passing he became a shell of his former self. Except for work. He didn't leave the house and became a recluse, not communicating with family or friends. Her death created a hole in his heart that he couldn't fill. In the last 3 years he became depressed and quiet. When Emily and I suggested he start dating, he explained that he didn't know anyone and didn't know how to be with anyone except his wife. Listening to this wonderful man, tears came to my eyes, and it occurred to me that I might have a solution for both of you. I told him about your deep love for Dad for 28 years and what a wonderful wife you are. I told him that over the years your intimate life had become stagnant and Dad had slowed down with age. I explained how we had discussed going on a date to get a little pick-me-up, but not for a long-term romance, just for friendship and maybe something more, but nothing long-term, since you would never leave Dad. When he saw your photo, his eyes lit up. He smiled and asked if I believed you would want to go on a date with him. Here's our conversation, Thomas. I assure you, if I show your mom your photo and tell her about you, she won't miss this chance. But she's a few years older than you. Won't that be a problem, Emily? No, if she looks the Jamesy. Not at all. She would love to spend some time with you. What about Dad? Will you really allow her to date you? After all, this is his wife. Thomas, like I said, leave it to me. Dad will do anything for Mom to make her happy, and she needs it no less than you. I think you can help each other and become good friends. Leave it to me and I will arrange everything. He'll talk to her, and if she agrees, I'll give you her number and then you can arrange it to eat and spend the night together. Emily, night? What do you mean? Thomas, you are both adults and both need each other. Be creative and plan an evening and night together. He thinks you are beautiful and would like to spend the night with you. If you are interested, I'll give him your cell phone number and tell him to call you during the day. He really looks good and is about 10 years younger than you. I know you will be happy. He just needs communication and a friend, and I know that you can help each other. The next day, Thomas called Elizabeth after a wonderful conversation. He invited her to become his companion and spend the night with him. When he complimented her on her photo and expressed how wonderful it would be to go on a date with her, she felt like a schoolgirl. The excitement of doing something different and his flirting made her feel butterflies in her stomach. She agreed to the date and told him she was looking forward to meeting him. He offered to pick her up, but she replied she preferred to meet him at the restaurant. They texted daily, flirting more and more. As the date approached by the evening of the date, Elizabeth's text messages would not have withstood a simple fidelity test. Now Michael walked around with a grin on his face and Elizabeth walked around with an uncontrollable desire for sex. This was a new level of excitement that she enjoyed beyond her dreams. I loved my daughter and considered her the most beautiful girl in the world. I was so proud of how she developed into the woman she has become today. I wish I had spent more time with her as she grew up, but I worked hard to give them a good life and tried to always be there for her as much as possible. I smiled when I saw her, but I was embarrassed. Darlene, what are you doing here? And where's your mother? I said as I placed a dozen roses on the table along with a bottle of wine and a box of chocolates. I have a special surprise for your mom tonight and I can't wait to see her. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out travel plans and tickets for a 7-day cruise. I'm taking your mom on a 7-day cruise on the new yacht, Love, and I can't wait to see her face when she finds out about it. Don't say anything when she gets home. I want to surprise her dad. She called me. When Darlene called me, Daddy, I always smiled, remembering how she was a little girl sitting on my lap, but I realized something was wrong. There were tears in her eyes and she was out of breath. Dad, we need to talk, she said, and a tear rolled down her cheek. She saw the worry on my face. What happened? Is something wrong with Mom? No, Mom is fine. Please just sit down and let me explain everything. I sat up and looked into her tear-filled eyes as she tried to continue. After a moment she spoke. Dad, you know how much Mom loves you, and she told me how good everything is between you two lately. Yes, and I love her too. That's why I want to show her how I feel now. Seeing her tears, I realized that everything she was going to tell me was not going as planned. I'm really sorry, Daddy, but Mommy has a date. I sat in silence, hearing the words but not understanding their meaning. Her tears flowed as my brain connected the dots into anger. Darlene, what are you talking about? Where is your mother? I demanded in a loud voice that made her shrink away from me in fear. Mommy loves you very much, Daddy, with incredible wife, and you may take this the wrong way, but Mommy went on a date with another man and won't be back home until tomorrow. She couldn't tell you herself, and I volunteered to tell you because she couldn't hurt you. It's just one night and Mom will be back tomorrow. Is this a joke? You can't be serious. Your mother would never do anything to betray me like that. She was so loving and we were so close. I cannot believe this. Dad, she loves you. She just had to do one thing. After 28 years of marriage, she felt uneasy and needed something more in life, at least once. Nothing will change between you, except that she will love you even more for giving it to her. I looked closely at my daughter. Darlene, why are you getting involved in this? Your mother shouldn't have brought you into this. I should be discussing this with her, not you. How did she get you into all this, Dad? You know that Mom and I have always been very close, and we tell each other everything. She told me that things had slowed down between you two in the bedroom and that she no longer felt, wanted and needed stimulation. My friend's father lost his wife several years ago. He was so depressed and also needed communication, and I sort of introduced them. I quickly stood up, knocking over the chair behind me. What the heck are you kidding? Did you introduce them and set up your mother on a date with another man? Is that what you mean? Lowering her head and looking at the floor, she was silent. Now I was pacing back and forth in the kitchen trying to make sense of this disaster. Damn it. Darlene, answer me. I shouted, standing over her, sending over her. Did you set it all up? My wife, your mother, is on a date with your friend's father and you arranged this. I'm really sorry, Daddy, but yes, it sounds bad when you say it like that. But I did it out of love for my friends, Mom and Dad. Holy hell, what have you done? Love for your friends, Mom and Dad. What about your love for me? Am I some piece of trash that you can throw away and expect me to accept whatever comes into your head? Where is she now? And what did you mean when you said she wouldn't come home until tomorrow, Dad? He took her to a restaurant, I don't know which one, and then they will spend the night together. But only this time. She'll be back tomorrow and, Daddy, she only loves you. All she's been telling me for the past 2 weeks is how much she loves you and doesn't want you to get hurt because of it's just a date in one night. She knew that you would understand and give her this one time. So is that all? I, like a fool, believe that her new advances for the last 2 weeks were motivated by love. But now you're telling me that it was her way of getting rid of guilt. Well, this will not lead to anything good, I assure you. Still in tears, she begged Dad. It's not like that at all. She never pretended or hurt you. On the contrary, she did everything possible to let you know that she loved you. Daddy, can't you just give her one night? You know that she loves you and cannot live without you. She told me she was looking forward to your retirement and spending time with your grandchildren. James and I are planning to have kids and we need both of you. Well, isn't that damn unusual? That ship sailed the moment she agreed to go on a date with some man who wasn't me. Who is this guy? My friend, Emily's dad. He's a really nice guy and you like him. Daddy, I think you have a lot in common. Oh yeah, we could be such good buddies. So you think I could befriend a man who knowingly dates a married woman, my wife? Maybe we can become drinking buddies and I can let him use your mom on the weekends. Is that what you two have planned for me? Darlene sank into her chair, realizing there was a serious flaw in her plan. She had never seen me so angry and talking to her like that. A shiver ran down her spine as she hid from my anger pacing around the room. I finally regained control of my emotions, turned to my daughter and spoke in a poisonous voice, a voice she didn't want to hear anymore. My hurt and pain were obvious and made her feel small and guilty for her role in all of this. Listen to me carefully, Darlene. I want you to leave now. I need to be alone to understand what you two did to me tonight. I don't want to see or hear you. Do not call me. Do not call me. Do not write never. Your betrayal is unforgivable. And now I have no daughter. You are dead to me. Do you understand what this means? I'm no longer your father and I don't have a daughter. Now get out of my house and never speak to me again. Darlene sobbed openly, with her head in her hands. Dad, please don't say that I love you and I want to stay here tonight. Mom and I plan for me to stay with you. We don't want you to be alone. Darlene, the level of disrespect you showed me makes me wonder if you ever respected me or loved me as your father. You are your mother's daughter. All these years, I worked like a horse to give you and your mother a better life, And this is the gratitude I get. No, turns out I'm only here as a meal ticket. I've obviously never earned respect from any of you. Between tears and sobs, she continued, Dad, I love you. Please don't say that. Just leave your mother, and I will talk about this tomorrow. You better go and be with your cheating mother. Immediately after Darlene left, I called Elizabeth on her cell phone and the call went straight to voicemail. I left her several messages begging her to call me and come home. Then, life. After a few drinks and no call back, I left several text messages with the Jamesy message, no answer. At 2 in the morning, I realized that she would not return home and was not going to answer my calls. I was tired of feeling sorry for myself and just stared at the TV, which was broadcasting more bad news. My world turned into a nightmare. In an instant I thought about our 28 years of marriage, the good times, the birth of our daughter, all the parties and proms, Darlene's wedding and the closeness we all shared, which were now gone forever. Before she cheated, Elizabeth and I were still having sex 2-3 times a week. Yes, it became a routine and was no longer as exciting as 28 years ago, but there were never any complaints, and after sex we always hugged and fell asleep in each other's arms. There wasn't a day or a phone call that went by without us saying, I love you to each other, and we rarely argued. Looking out the window, I found myself staring at the art studio I had built for Elizabeth to support her hobby. She spent most of her time for the past 20 years creating wonderful paintings and sculptures in that studio, winning several awards for her work, which were displayed in the room I built to showcase all her awards and paintings. It became a shrine to my wife's work and her refuge. I always felt that, besides our daughter, that damn studio was the most important thing in her world. I was at best third on her list of priorities, but I loved her, and as long as she was happy, everything suited me. The conversation with Darlene hit me hard. The revelation that Elizabeth needed to sleep with another man took me by surprise without the slightest warning. Apparently, with all the years of working long hours to provide for my family, I was too busy to notice that she was not satisfied with me or our marriage. To do this to us without talking to me and instead sharing it with Darlene was humiliating and fueled my anger. I thought about my life, my home, and my future. I inherited my house and property from my grandfather, and it was in my name before we got married. There was no mortgage on the house, which got me thinking in my drunken state. With my anger welling up, I began to think of ways to hurt Elizabeth, like she had hurt me today. As I continued to look out the window at her studio, the devil sitting on my shoulder whispered in my ear. Maybe it was the alcohol, maybe it was the pain of betrayal or the humiliation in front of my daughter, but I suddenly felt a surge of strength. With renewed energy, I jumped up from the couch and replaced my sadness with action. I made over a dozen trips to our bedroom, collected all her things and moved them into the studio. All of her expensive shoes, dress, clothes, underwear, jewelry, and everything that belonged to her now lay on the floor in the center of her sanctuary, the art studio. For the next hour, I walked around the house and collected all the photo albums, including all of our wedding photos, and placed them on top of the growing pile. Then I remembered that she had vacuum-sealed things in the attic. I found her wedding dress, baby clothes, and many other sentimental items and dragged them into the pile, which was now over 3 feet high. It's amazing how much one person can collect over the years. Then I took all her pictures off the walls and added them to the pile. The sculptures, All her sketches and everything she loved were now part of a growing pile of things. It was already 5 in the morning and I was still on edge. I told myself I wouldn't do anything until 6 a.m. to give her a chance to come home or answer my calls and texts. If I don't get a response or she's not home, I'll finish what I started. I walked through the house again, making sure everything she owned and cared for was in the studio. At 5:30, I grabbed a 5-gallon can of gasoline from the garage and went to the studio, getting ready for 6 a.m. During this time, I went online, canceled the joint credit cards and transferred money to our accounts. I took cash out of the safe and packed a few suitcases, then put them in my truck. Since I had to spend some time away from home until the lawyer sorted everything out, I waited another 5 minutes for her to return, and at 6:05, abandoning my last hope, I poured gasoline onto the pile and along the walls of the studio with a deep sigh, and after a few seconds of hesitation, I made my decision and threw a lit match onto the floor, which instantly ignited the pile of her treasures. The fire spread quickly, and before I had time to leave, the flames were already visible from the street. The fire quickly consumed her world and everything she loved. As I drove along the highway, a sudden realization struck me. Amplified by the terrible state I was in, a terrible sadness overcame me and tears began to stream down my face. At that moment it became clear that my once wonderful marriage had suffered the James E. fate as the studio. It burned down. What I didn't expect was that the fire spread from the studio to the back porch, which caught fire along with the art studio. Luckily, firefighters who put out the fire in the studio were able to extinguish the fire on the porch and save the house. The home sustained significant smoke damage and was uninhabitable until the damage was repaired. While all this was going on, I checked into a highway motel about 70 mi from the smoldering ashes that had once been my marriage and paid in cash. I didn't want to be found until I could think straight, and using credit cards would make it easier if the police came looking for me. I was awake and running on adrenaline until I opened the door to my room. I turned off the phone and collapsed on the bed, falling into a deep sleep and waking up. Only at noon my phone started glowing. As soon as I turned it on, I had dozens of missed calls and texts from Darlene, Elizabeth, and the sheriff. After getting out of the Uber, Elizabeth met Thomas at the restaurant and was both nervous and excited to see this handsome young man waiting for her at the reception desk. He smiled when he saw her, admiring her little black dress, black sheer tights and matching high heel. His eyes were drawn to her exposed cleavage highlighted by her black bra. She had spent several hours at the salon to get her hair and makeup, perfect for this one-time experience. Thomas looked pleased with what he saw and the way he adjusted. His growing manhood emphasized his reaction. Her confidence grew as she realized he liked what he saw. She greeted him with a tender kiss. When he greeted her, they started at the bar and sat on one of the bar stools. When she stood up, she saw that he was looking at her nylon-covered legs down to her panties. They both smiled. As he ordered their drinks, she decided to turn off her phone so that nothing would interfere with the night's entertainment. She knew that this night would never happen again and was going to enjoy every moment. There was chemistry between them, and they got along like old friends. She found herself touching his arm and flirting, something she didn't usually do with anyone, including Michael, but tonight she was going to unleash her inner temptress and enjoy the experience. After their second drink, the lovely hostess announced that their table was ready and showed them to their seats. The dinner was wonderful and she enjoyed the conversation and their time together. When he asked if she still wanted to spend the night with him, She took off her heels and slipped her foot between his legs. When he looked down at her red toenails, kicking through the sheer nylon, he smiled and said it was time to go. Holding hands, he led her to his hotel room, which he had already booked. As the elevator doors opened on the 10th floor, she realized what she was about to do and suddenly thought of Michael. He must have noticed, because he pulled her close and gave her a romantic kiss like she'd never experienced before. That was all she needed to forget about her husband and marriage for the night. Once in the room, he wasted no time unzipping her dress. When it fell to the floor, he undressed, stood in front of her, spun her round and told her how sexy she looked. He then took off her bra and laid her on the bed. She didn't know how long it lasted, but it was so sensual and loving that she melted. In anticipation of future events, she got on her knees and worshipped his tool for the next 10 minutes. He couldn't take it anymore and forcibly removed her pantyhose, ordering her to put her heels back on because he found them so sexy. It made her feel a little lewd. While they were having sex, he kissed her several times, making her feel as if he were an Olympic kissing champion. She briefly thought, got to get Michael to do this. It's so sexy. But then she stopped comparing and enjoyed the experience. He looked deep into her eyes and said, "I love you, Elizabeth." It was unexpected and his words touched her heart. She could only describe it as a religious experience, so powerful that she was overcome with tears of joy. They made love for more times that night and another time in the morning, each time as intense as the last. It was by far the best sexual experience of her life, and she was pleased with herself for allowing it to happen. Elizabeth began to think about Michael, but tried to focus on the man, hugging her as tightly as he could. As they lay there, with the sun peeking through the curtains, he kissed her tenderly and stroked her hair. "Thomas, Elizabeth, as I said last night, I was serious. You are an amazing woman, so sexy and sensual. I think I love you and want to spend more time with you. Can we meet again?" Elizabeth, now worried, tried to be gentle. "Thomas, it was the best sex of my life and you are a wonderful, sweet man, but I'm happily married and I can't do it again. It was a one-time experience. I loved it and you were great. You are a wonderful lover and I enjoyed every second of it. Thomas, Elizabeth, think before you say no. Your husband doesn't seem to mind, and if you let this continue, I can make you very happy. Just think about it before you say no. Please, Elizabeth." "Okay, yes, I'll think about it, but this is the best I can do right now." With another deep kiss, he held her tightly and she melted into his arms. If she weren't married to Michael, she would be with this man in a heartbeat, but her husband was Michael and she hoped he could forgive her for what she just did. After breakfast, they left the hotel while he was driving her home. She turned on her phone for the first time since their date last night and was shocked to see all the missed calls and texts. Seeing Michael's messages, she felt a pain of guilt in her heart. This dear man was suffering and she wasn't there. Tears came to her eyes knowing this pain was caused by her. Before she could move on to the next text message, the phone rang. "Emily, Mom, said the idiot gang submonitor. Where are you, Elizabeth?" "Hey baby, I'm almost home." "Emily, Mom, there was a fire at the house. We tried to call you all night, but it seems you turned off your phone." "Elizabeth, fire. Where's your dad?" "Emily, that's the point. Mom, he's missing." Nobody knows where he is and he doesn't answer calls either. I have a bad feeling, Mom. Elizabeth, I'm almost there. I'll call you back. As Thomas turned into the neighborhood, Elizabeth saw a fire TR and police in front of their house. She didn't see any damage at the front of the house and asked the firefighters what happened. Firefighter, are you the owner of the house? Elizabeth, feeling everyone's eyes on her. Yes, I'm Elizabeth Keller, firefighter. Well, Miss Keller, we were able to save the house. Only the back porch was damaged, but I'm afraid you won't be able to stay here until you call the experts to clean up the smoke from inside your house. The majority of the damage was to the small cottage behind your home. I'm afraid it's completely lost. Elizabeth felt her legs give out and Thomas caught her helping her sit on the curb. My studio. Is it damaged? Firefighter. Sorry. Mrs. Keller, all that's left of it is smoldering ashes. Well, try to figure out the cause of the fire, but in the meantime, the police detective has a few questions for you. Elizabeth quickly stood up and ran to the back of the house before Sergeant Peterson could ask her any questions. He caught up with her as she stood in front of the remains of her most prized possession. Sergeant Peterson, Mrs. Keller, do you know what happened here, Cynthia? Elizabeth. No, I wasn't here last night and I have no idea about anything. Are you her husband? He asked, turning to Thomas. No, just a friend. Elizabeth's face turned red with embarrassment as the sergeant gave her a knowing look and asked where her husband was. Elizabeth, I don't know. Sergeant Peterson, where were you last night? Elizabeth, timidly. I was with Thomas at the Hilton Hotel in the city center. The looks thrown at her by the sergeant and his assistant made her realize the seriousness of her situation. She had just admitted she didn't spend the night with her husband, who was also missing. The detective now had more questions. Sergeant Peterson, are you and your husband separated? Do you know where he was last night? Elizabeth, no, we are happily married. Then realizing how stupid it sounded after admitting she spent the night with another man, he doesn't answer calls. Well, want to talk to him, so when you talk to him, please give him my number. He handed her his business card, shaking with anger and fear. Elizabeth felt anger at the loss of her refuge and all the work she had created over the years. Everything was gone forever. She feared that Michael could be so angry as to do this and what it would mean for her marriage. She needed to talk to him as soon as possible. Elizabeth called Emily. Do you know where your father is? Emily, no, I haven't talked to him since yesterday evening. Why didn't you stay here with him like we planned? Elizabeth, Mom. He threw me out and said that I was no longer his daughter. Hearing these words, Elizabeth felt a chill rush through her body. Michael would never say something like that. And if he did, it would be much worse than she could have imagined. Entering the house, she saw damage to the walls from smoke and felt the terrible smell that permeated their home. It was obvious that it was impossible to live there in such conditions. She walked through their house deciding to take clothes and some personal items for a few days. When she entered the bedroom, she saw that everything had disappeared and panicked. She realized that all her clothes, shoes and personal belongings were missing. Her heart sank as she looked at her nightstand for her wedding rings. They were gone. Why did I leave my rings? What was I thinking? If Michael saw them on the dresser, he must have thought she had abandoned him and their marriage. How stupid and selfish could I be? In complete panic, she ran around the house, looking into every room and realizing that all her things were missing. A terrible thought suddenly came to her. Did he really burn everything? Is there really nothing left? She ran out of the house and returned to the studio to take a closer look at the remains. She saw picture frames in the middle of the room and pieces of clothing that were not completely destroyed. It was obvious that Michael had not accepted her day off as expected, but had in fact destroyed everything important to her out of his life. In one fell swoop, Elizabeth called Emily crying, "Emily, I need somewhere to stay." Thomas quickly invited her to stay with him, but he was the last person on earth she wanted to see, so she declined. "I need to be alone," she said. "Please leave." He was hurt by her tone and left her standing there crying at that moment. She was angry with herself and with the man she had spent the night with. She knew she was wrong, but blamed him for her selfish act of betrayal when the blame clearly lay with her. "Emily, Mom, don't say that Dad loves you." "Elizabeth, honey." "He burned everything. All my clothes, my paintings, my studio. He didn't leave me anything, not even a place to live. He doesn't pick up the phone or answer my calls. What I did is unforgivable. I shouldn't have gone on that date and just told him how I felt. We could have worked things out, but my selfishness pushed him away. If I were in his place, I would never be able to take him back. What should I do now? I have neither a house nor clothes. Emily, Mom, don't blame yourself. The fault is partly mine, and you can live with us until your house is restored this afternoon. We can buy new clothes and settle you in the evening." "Elizabeth, Emily, all my paintings and sculptures are gone. 28 years of marriage and 20 years of my life's work are destroyed, and I was left alone. I have nothing to live for. Emily, Mom, don't say that I'll help you." Elizabeth sobbed openly while the neighbors looked at her from the road. "Emily, my wife. Mom, Dad is calling me. I'll call you back." Fumbling with the buttons, desperately trying to answer the call. Elizabeth almost passed out. At the last second she managed to connect. "Elizabeth." "Michael, is that you? Michael." Elizabeth. How are you, Elizabeth?" "Michael, where are you? Please come home. We need to talk." "Michael." "No, Elizabeth. I know everything from Emily." "Yes, your daughter, not mine. You are both dead to me, and this may be the last time we talk." "Michael." "No, please don't say that I love. You should know this." "Michael." "The studio is gone. Did you do this?" "Michael." "Elizabeth. You did it. Not me. Maybe not physically, but she burned from your treachery and betrayal. When I saw that your rings were thrown away and you gave yourself to another in my heart, you died. Your actions are inexcusable, and Emily's involvement is humiliating and incomprehensible. We're done. You'll meet with the lawyers on Monday and start the process." "Elizabeth, please." "Michael, can't we talk and work things out? You can't just throw away our 28 wonderful years like that." "Michael." "Elizabeth, we talking, and I'm not the one who threw away our 28 wonderful years. You planned to betray me, gave me 2 weeks of amazing love to ease your conscience, and then cheated on me with the help of your daughter. There is no person on this entire earth who could accept these actions or forgive and forget this level of treachery and betrayal. It was pure evil, and I pray that you regret your actions for the rest of your pathetic life. This is the last time we talk. You can contact me through my attorney's contact information, which will be included with the divorce decree. Goodbye, Elizabeth." "Michael." "No, wait. Michael." Michael was God, and so was the world she loved and cherished. Emily arrived just as she was holding the phone trying to call Michael, who had already hung up. They hugged each other crying over their loss. Finally, they realized that they could not remain in the ruins of their home while the fire and police investigated. They needed to figure things out, so they went to Emily's house. When they arrived, Emily explained everything to James, who was shocked by her explanation of events. "Emily, James, I need to tell you the whole story, but when you learned that I arranged a date with another man for my mother and knew that my father would be alone, you might not understand. It was just a one-time date after 28 years of marriage. For God's sake, it wasn't meant to end like this. James, Emily, you arranged a date with another man for your mother and, on top of that, you knew your father would be alone. You should have known he wouldn't accept it. What kind of man would allow his wife to go on a date with another? Is this what you'll do when we get older? Will you voluntarily cock-led me, like your mother did to your father? He was such a wonderful guy and you and your mom were his whole world. What have you done, Emily? I'll tell you what you did. You destroyed a good man and forced him to do unthinkable things. I can't express how disappointed I am in you, Emily. I'll contact him and apologize for your stupidity when this is all over. You and I will have a long conversation about our future together. Having children with you is officially on hold. Until I better understand your values, I'll tell you straight I don't share them and will never tolerate such betrayal." Emily was shocked by his anger and surprised that he did not understand her mother's situation. It was just a one-time date after 28 years of marriage, so what she thought. But she realized the big problem was the end of her parents' marriage, the loss of her father and her mother's happy life. Soon they would all know the consequences of her actions. 5 long days later, I returned to my house to assess the damage. I wasn't going to file an insurance claim because I didn't want to add any more potential costs to what I already had. At the meeting with the lawyer, I explained that the house belonged to me and was not part of the settlement. Elizabeth could get half our savings and no alimony. If she resisted, I would file a suit for adultery and tell everyone how she cheated on me with her daughter's friend's father. I already met with a lawyer and started filing divorce papers. Then I asked for the name of a criminal arson lawyer, but after meeting with him I realized that since I own the property, there probably wouldn't be a criminal prosecution unless I filed an insurance claim, which I had no intention of doing. In the worst-case scenario, firefighters might issue a fine, but criminal charges would not go through the courts unless a false report was filed. One of our neighbors who Emily went to school with called her. When she saw me come home and enter the house, Emily quickly came to me. I was inspecting the damage and assessing the work needed to make the house livable. When I heard the front door open, "Emily, Dad, where are you?" I heard Emily scream as she entered the house. I didn't answer and continued assessing the damage, looking out the window and seeing the pile of ashes that had once been Elizabeth's hideout. I smiled. When Emily found me in one of the bedrooms, she quickly ran up to me and gave me a big hug. "Emily, Daddy, I am so sorry. Please forgive us. We love you. Michael, Emily, I will never forgive either of you, and I already told you never to talk to me again. Now please, let me go and leave me alone. Emily, no, you are my father and you must forgive me. I am your only daughter and you love me, Michael. Pay attention, I no longer have a daughter, only a treacherous woman who broke my heart. Now you are not my daughter. Please leave me alone. Emily, Dad, Mom needs you. She lives with us and misses you very much. She cries all the time and wants to apologize for her mistake. Could you come to my house and see her? Michael. Never the moment she went on that date and spent the night with another man. She ended our marriage hell. She even left her wedding rings on the table, which means the end of our marriage. It's over and I won't talk to her anymore. You can both contact me through my lawyer. Later today I will buy a new phone and number, but for now you better go and be with your cheating mother. Emily, are you really going to throw away 28 years of a happy marriage with your mother? Michael. No, not me. Your mother threw away these 28 years as soon as she took off the rings and went to her lover. It was you and your mother who ruined my 28 happy years, and for this I will never forgive or forget you. Now get out of my house for the second time. Emily ran out of her childhood home crying the pain of her dad. Telling her that she was no longer his daughter was devastating and heartbreaking. Even years of therapy could never take away the pain of his words. The next day, Elizabeth was served with divorce papers and collapsed, realizing that her marriage was over because of her selfish act of infidelity. She tried to fight him, went to counseling and tried to talk to Michael, but to no avail. He never spoke to her, Emily. Again, James finally got through to Michael and expressed his anger and disappointment at what the girls had done. He said he changed his mind about having children because of his feelings about Emily's loyalty and her involvement in what they did to Michael. James would never want to live with a woman who thought like this and is currently undergoing counseling to see if they can save their marriage. Elizabeth wanted to move back into the house after Michael rebuilt it, but the divorce agreement stated that the house belonged to Michael and was not part of the divorce agreement. She would have to find her own place. The judge eventually awarded her half of their savings and $30 a month in alimony for 10 years, which Michael had no intention of paying. Elizabeth would have to find a job and support herself, something she hadn't done during the previous 28 years of their marriage. She eventually moved out of Emily's apartment and into a small-room apartment near the city center, where she found work at a small art gallery as a sales agent to make ends meet. Elizabeth's creative freedom was suddenly in jeopardy. She would no longer be able to spend all her time in the beautiful studio that Michael built for her. She would no longer be able to sit in front of her art projects and enjoy the beautiful view of the lake from the large panoramic windows that her husband gave her. Soon she would be too busy with work and use all her free time to make her life even little like before. All her free time was gone, along with her luxury and happy marriage, a video game Subnautica, all for one exciting night with another man. She would never have enough tears to erase all the hurt and suffering caused by her one-time experience. Her loving husband, Michael, would never speak to her again. Hearing how he disowned their daughter left her heartbroken. Emily fell into a deep depression due to the breakdown of her parents' marriage. To cope with the pain and save her own marriage, which was now falling apart, she turned to a psychotherapist. A few months later, the house was restored. Michael continued to pay. The court ordered compensation and, without warning anyone, sold the house. One day after the sale, Elizabeth came to him to try to reconcile and ask for forgiveness. When she rang the bell, she was greeted by a young couple opening the door. New owner, hello. How can we help you? Elizabeth. Yes, I'm looking for Michael Keller. Is he here, new owner? Oh, that nice man who sold us this house. No, he said he was leaving the country to start a new life. He was so sweet and so helpful. Are you by any chance? Elizabeth. Yes, it's me, new owner. He left an envelope and asked us to give it to you if you ever stopped by. Elizabeth. Thank you. I will read it later. Good luck and enjoy this wonderful home. Elizabeth sat in the car and cried, knowing she would never see Michael again, and about the love she had so carelessly thrown away. Returning to her lonely apartment, she sat up in bed, her hand trembling as she opened the letter. Letter from Michael. Elizabeth. 28 wonderful years. I will always remember the wonderful life we lived together. You were my first and only love, and I am very sorry that I did not cope with the role of your husband. If I had known that you needed more, I would have raised heaven and earth for you. But since you decided to seek your path alone, then this is how we will end our marriage alone. After 2 wonderful weeks leading up to your betrayal, I actually believed that you had fallen in love with me again. Those weeks were the happiest in all the years I spent with you. When Emily explained how you used these weeks to distract me from your betrayal, it crushed my soul. I'm sure Emily already told you, but that night I was so excited to come home to give you a special night with 2 dozen roses, your favorite chocolates and wine. I was going to surprise you with a new cruise on the yacht Love. Having learned that your love and adoration were fake and your real goal was to sleep with another man, I felt humiliated. Congratulations. You ruined me and our marriage. Because of this, I can no longer stay in this city. I quit my job and found a new life in another country. Don't try to look for me, because I will be offline and I really don't want to talk to you or Emily anymore. This part of my life is over and I will start a new life without you. It will take me years to get over the pain and betrayal you both caused. There was no way I could stay in this wonderful home without the love of my life and my wonderful daughter. Since both of them are now dead to me, I have no reason to stay here. I sincerely hope that your special night was with our marriage and my love. I suspect so, and I'm sure you and your daughter will enjoy the stories you share. Have a happy life and please forget about me and our years together, like I already did. My new life has already begun without you. Elizabeth actually thought there were no more tears left, but after reading his letter, she sobbed uncontrollably all night, curled up in a ball. The excitement and memories of the amazing sex with Thomas became a distant memory, now replaced by regret and sadness. Now at 50 and alone, she knew her future without Michael was bleak. She gave up her luxurious life for one night of selfish excitement. Michael came to Thomas late at night as he was leaving for his new home in Ecuador. When the door opened, Michael pushed his way into the house and introduced himself as the husband of the woman he had stolen from him. Thomas tried to explain that he thought Elizabeth didn't mind being with him and would never have pursued her if he thought she didn't. But it was too late. Michael didn't accept any of his excuses. All the anger, rage and pain he had lived with for the past months were directed at the predator standing in front of him. The conversation was quick as Michael used a crowbar. In less than a minute, Thomas's life changed forever. Before Michael walked to his waiting Uber to leave for the airport and fly out of the country, he looked at the wincing man and said, "I give advice. Messing with a married woman is harmful to your health." By the time Thomas arrived at the emergency room and told the police what had happened, Michael was already on his way to his new apartment on the beach in Mayan BG. His new life had begun without his previous baggage and family. It took police detectives 2 weeks to figure out that Michael was no longer in the country and they couldn't touch him until he returned home. Even if they managed to find him, there is no extradition in Ecuador for assault charges. Thomas spent 2 agonizing weeks in the hospital and many months in physical therapy learning to walk with his new knees. Unfortunately for him, the 25 stitches on his face will remain a lasting reminder of that night with the married woman. He didn't know what his life would be like, but he knew that the life he once had was over thanks to those 2 women who convinced him to take someone else's wife. He never spoke or saw Elizabeth or Emily again. Emily's husband, James of the video games of Mario Games and Nautica, nearly divorced her over the incident, but a psychologist helped Emily understand what she had done and she promised to remain faithful to James and their future family. James waited 2 years before agreeing to have children to convince himself that his wife would never betray him the way she betrayed her father. True to his word and her remorse, Michael never spoke to Emily again. Again, by her action, she forever rejected her dad and his love. Upon learning of Thomas's beating, Elizabeth and Emily were devastated and felt responsible for the attack, adding to the guilt and pain they caused Michael, and for destroying their family. It was another reminder that their actions had far-reaching consequences that they didn't even know about. Both realized that their delusional thoughts that if only Michael had allowed Elizabeth that one time their happy life would have continued were wrong. Their stupidity meant that a happy life could never be further from the truth. The loss of their father and husband became a deep pain for them, with which they would live until the end of their days. Due to depression and age, Elizabeth never found another man and lived a lonely, sad life. All her plans for a happy old age with Michael and their grandchildren were now just a distant memory. Since Michael stopped paying alimony as soon as he left the country, her savings didn't last long and she had to continue working to survive. Crying in her sleep became her usual activity. I now have over 75. Zero from the sale of my house and the money I've saved over the past 28 years minus the purchase of my new apartment. With this amount of money here in Ecuador, my next 30 years will be lived in comfort and peace. There are a lot of young, pretty women here who appreciate a generous American man, and I enjoy being with all of them. 6 months after that terrible night, I found myself on the beach in Pool Jeze, opposite my new apartment, drinking the cold beer and realizing that divorce is normal. Breaking up is okay and it's okay to be alone. What is not normal is staying in a place where you are not valued or respected. This will never happen again. Thanks for watching this intense and heartbreaking story. Have you ever experienced a betrayal like Michael's?